Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode. Today's topic, oh my God. Oh my God. This is such an important topic. Buckle up, prepare to listen to the whole thing. This is the lesson I've been learning again and again, and the universe is just delivering this lesson to me in multiple ways. So I couldn't help but share this with you this week. As many of you know, or if you're just tuning in, right now I'm doing an event called 201010. So this is my reflection on the last 20 years. So the first 10 years of my journey were pain, like pure pain with food. So I was binge eating, emotional eating. I felt completely out of control with food. I couldn't stop thinking of food, whether it was planning or recovering or getting on the next meal plan or whatever it was just incessant. Then the 10 years that followed that were filled with freedom and peace and ease. And I've had, not only did food become a non-issue, but now I have the most healthy relationship with food that I could have even asked for. And it only keeps getting better and better. And one of the things that shifted between those first 10 years and those second 10 years was I had a period of time where I just went through a whole bunch of internal shifts. And a lot of what I'm teaching you over these 20 weeks is these internal shifts because things started changing so much faster. Like things that I had been struggling with for 10 years, I saw more progress in the span of 1 to 2 weeks than I did in that entire 10-year period. And here's the interesting thing, and I promise this is very much connected to this episode. So the catalyst that spurred me for the change was I injured myself. So after those 10 years of food misery, I injured myself, which was a huge deal because at that point, over exercising was my way of damage control because I was eating so much. So, of course, as a result of all this over exercise, all that came to a halt. I injured myself very badly. And then what followed from there was extremely intense chronic pain for years, 10 years. But now I'm going through the exact same internal shifts that I did with food, but now it's being applied to movement. And I got to tell you, over the last 2 to 3 months, I have made more progress with my body than I did in the last 10 years. And it's through these same internal shifts that I've been teaching you each week. So, what I wanted to start off this episode with, actually, now that you have the background story, is something that happened to me literally just 10 days ago. So here's the story. So ever since about 3, 4 months ago, I changed my mentality around how I was approaching movement. Because as I said, over the last 10 years, even though I've invested a lot of time, energy, money into getting rid of my chronic pain, I really wasn't making progress until a few months ago. And I have talked about this in the last few episodes, so I won't go too deep into it. But all you need to know for right now is I've been rebuilding my body. I've been very consistent at it for the last few months. And then recently I found this gym, and this gym specializes in the type of training that I've really dedicated myself to rebuild my body. And not only that, but the gym also has coaches and classes who are true experts in this, who I could learn from. So anyway, I get really excited about this and I go online and I look up the membership options and I see that per month, it's exactly 10 times more than my current gym membership that I already have. And my current gym membership I keep because I always use it when I travel. Now, I want to walk you through what my thought process was. And you'll see in a minute how this is going to connect to our topic for today. And by the way, this is very embarrassing to share, but I'm sharing it because this is a pattern that I've had that I know you might have too. So it's worth being embarrassed. Okay. Here was my thought process. Oh, wow, that's 10 times more. Shoot. Well, I already have my gym membership. So why don't I just keep doing what I'm doing? And I can just learn online like I've been. And, I have a background in yoga and personal training. So chances are I'll be able to figure out a lot of this stuff by myself. And as long as I stay consistent, well, I can still make progress without having to pay all this money to go to this gym. And then I caught myself and I said, Katie, what are you doing? What are you even thinking right now? I have already established this is my top priority in my life right now. This priority of rebuilding my body trumps everything else. Number two, I've been in physical pain for literally 10 years. And number three, I'm nearing 40. This is not the age where the body starts to magically get stronger if you don't do something about it. And number four, I already know just from reflecting over these last 20 years as I've been doing these episodes, how fast 20 years can go by. And guess what? In my next 20 years, I'm going to be 60. And even with all of that considered, here I am telling myself that I'm being quote unquote responsible by trying to find the most economical way to accomplish the same thing. Like, what am I kidding myself? Katie, pay the money. This is exactly what you need and want. This is people who can help you. I know I have blind spots, and I know that when I'm in an environment with people who are better than me, who are already living what I want, this should be a no-brainer. And not only that, but if someone else came to me with this, like one of my clients or my sister or my mom with the same dilemma, should I join the gym and pay more? Or should I figure out and maybe I can do it on my own? Just give yourself the best chances at succeeding if this is truly important to you. And now here's the lesson, because the lesson isn't about money or memberships or gym or no gym. The lesson isn't about that. The lesson is these subtle ways that we deprioritize ourselves, the subtle ways that we undermine our needs or minimize our needs in ways that we would never do for our loved ones. And here's what's sneaky about it, okay? Because I was not just blatantly saying, oh, screw it, it doesn't matter, I'm not going to do anything. That kind of self-sabotage we can all recognize. Oh, I already had a cookie, might as well eat the whole box and start fresh tomorrow. That's obvious. There's also many types of very subtle forms of self-sabotage. And why they're so tricky is because oftentimes they are disguised as we are prioritizing ourselves, or we're just being responsible, or we're just being logical, or we're just being realistic. And I wanted to go deeper today, not just in the various ways that this can show up, but the types of questions or little tests you can give yourself to figure out what's going on. And then you can make that shift in real time. So you don't spend 10 years on a problem like I've done now twice. So this is a lesson that obviously I'm still practicing. But now I've gotten to the point where I can identify these things faster, which helps me change faster. And by the way, spoiler alert, I joined the gym immediately. I've literally been going for the last, week and a half. And I've seen more progress in the last 10 days now than I have in the last few months, where I already saw more progress than I did in the last 10 years. So I'm like a rocket ship right now. And I am so excited. And I can't believe I even considered not doing this. But anyway, that's slightly beside the point. But my goal for you is by the time we get to the end of this episode, you will have been able to identify multiple examples in your own life. And this all together is going to illuminate some of those blind spots. So that way you can move faster with a lot more ease and peace and freedom. Sound like a plan? Alrighty. So given that all of this is going to be centered around your relationship with yourself and your relationship with the parts of your life that are most important to you, we're going to go now into each of these 4 categories, talk about each one of them with some examples, and then I'll give you little questions or tests that you can self-reflect, self-analyze, self-diagnose what's going on. And notice this come up in the future as well and catch it then too. Okay, so let's look at the 4 categories now. The first category is going to sound obvious, but there's subtleties here. Okay. The first category is time. So the obvious thing that we know is the more we spend time on something, the higher priority it is, right? I'm not talking about our intentions. I'm talking about where our time is actually going. Okay. So if somebody was looking at your life and they knew nothing about your thoughts and nothing about your intentions, and all they saw was how you're spending your time, what would they say your priority is? So that's just the first question to start thinking about. But I want to give you a story before we move on to illustrate this point. Okay. So years ago, I had this client and she showed up. We have our weekly calls, and she showed up to the call and she was extremely frustrated. And she said to me, I have been working nonstop. I have seen no change. If anything, my binges are just getting worse. I joined this program. I thought it would work. I'm feeling like I'm even worse. So I said, okay, let's figure it out. I said, first, I haven't received any of your eating skill sheets from this week. So why don't you send me those so that way we can start there and I'll take a look. And she said, oh, I didn't really fill those out this week. Meanwhile, this is a core part of my program that I always have, that every client does. For the whole week, she couldn't send me one. So I went to the next thing that I have my clients do. I said, okay, well, let's see. How many meditations did you do? Because I give them very specific meditations to reprogram. I said, look at your sheet. Tell me how many times you did the meditations this week. She goes, oh, well, I didn't write it down, but it was probably like 2 or 3, which basically means none. And I looked at where she was in terms of what week of the program she was on. I said, okay, so you had 4 different lessons to listen to this week. Which of those lessons stood out to you the most? And she goes, I can't really remember what they were. And I named the first one. I said, this one. And she said, oh, yeah. And I said, what was your biggest takeaway from that lesson? I can't really remember. I'll have to listen to it again. And she said, oh, I can't. I'll have to listen to it again. And I said, okay, well, this lesson, I named the second one. Yeah, I might have to re-listen to that one too. So here I am thinking, you just told me how you've been working so hard all week. You've been thinking about this nonstop. Meanwhile, I just named literally the only things that I've asked you to do all week, and you haven't done any of them. So I said this and I said, you said you've been working hard all week, yet this is the only work that I gave you. So if you haven't done this, what work have you actually been doing? And she had this realization that why did she feel like she was working so hard? She realized, yes, she was using all of this mental bandwidth, but her time, where was it really going? Into thinking about food, worrying about binging, thinking about why she's binging, being frustrated that she's still binging. But none of her time actually went to the exercises that I gave her that would actually help her change her relationship with food. So when it comes to spending and investing time in ourselves on the things that we really care about and want to prioritize, notice how we can actually spend enormous amounts of time thinking about changing our life without actually engaging in the things and the practices that actually would change our life. So this is one of the ways that we don't realize we're deprioritizing ourselves. It's sneaky because we are giving it the time, but it's not the time spent on what matters. And this could also manifest in the opposite way. We could also see, if we really are honest with ourselves, actually, I'm not spending my time on this. I say that this is my priority, but the time that I spend would not actually reflect that. Like, for example, with me, for years, I was saying my health was my top priority, that this was my highest value, that this was the most important thing. But if you were to just look at my day and see the blocked off time, you would see that I spent 14 hours a day sitting at my desk and maybe an hour on maybe a yoga class here and there. That amount of time spent hunched over the computer compared to how much I was actually prioritizing my health, it does not reflect what my values actually were. Where anyone on the outside would look at my schedule, what they would see is, oh, sitting hunched over on the computer is clearly her priority, right? So these are the questions, this is the first little test you can ask yourself, okay? And I wrote these questions down. Number 1, am I giving this enough time? Am I giving this enough time? Number 2, what am I actually doing during that time? So ask yourself, am I confusing, worrying, researching, planning, thinking about something with actually working on it? Okay, so that's time. We've covered time. Let's go into the second category now, which is your attention. Attention. All right. And you already know what this means, but we're going to get into the deeper stuff. You already know where your attention goes, your energy flows, right? So your attention is going to be very, very important because what does attention represent? Your focus. What are you focused on? What are you giving your attention to? Now, we can get tripped up in a whole slew of places here. But one of the ways is we might give something our time, but we're not necessarily giving it our attention. I'm going to give you an example. This is, again, an embarrassing story, but here we go. So when I first basically moved into the ashram and I was long-term living with monks and engaging in the daily schedule, this always included twice daily meditation. Now, the meditation was half hour in the morning, half hour in the evening. But what I would do is I would sit there on my cushion, I would close my eyes, and I would just try to entertain myself for the next 30 minutes until it was over. So I'm sitting in meditation, looking like a perfect statue. Where was my attention? Not on the meditation, not even trying on the meditation. Because here's the thing. Even when I put my attention, it's natural. During meditation, your attention flies away. That's a normal part of meditation. And part of the practice is bringing yourself back. So I'm not saying you need to be perfect in order to practice this. What I'm saying was I was sitting there for 30 minutes twice a day, not even trying to give this my attention. What was I really doing? Checking it off the box. Now I can say that I meditate twice a day. But what was I really doing? I was just sitting there every 5 minutes, opening my eyes, looking at the clock, seeing how much time was left, being, oh, well, what else can I think about to pass the time? So notice how I was putting the time into the meditation. I even lived in an ashram with monks. Like most people won't just go and do that. It was really important to me to be able to cultivate peace of mind. I'm here, I'm dedicating the time, but I was not putting in the attention. You see, misalignment. Even with the previous story I just told you with my past client, it's possible that she was telling the truth and she actually did listen to the lessons from that week. But because she couldn't remember even one takeaway or even the topic of any of the lessons, even if she gave it her time, there was no way she was present. There was no way she was giving it her attention. So time without attention just becomes checking things off a box. So these are the questions. This is a little test you can give yourself. Number 1, am I doing this to just check it off a list? Is that my attitude, that I'm just treating it like a chore that I check off? Or am I engaged? Am I treating this like a practice that I'm growing in? Because your time without your attention gives the illusion that we're prioritizing something when really we're not. Okay, so now we're going to move on to category 3. There's 2 categories left here. So for category 3, this I would say is a huge one. This is where 99.9% of my clients miss the mark most before they come to me. This is also where I've missed the mark the most myself. So category number 3 is direction. And I'm going to explain what that means. Sometimes we work extremely hard with tons of time, tons of attention, but we're working on the wrong thing. My personal example that I've shared with you over the last few weeks in the podcast, for years, if you had asked me if I was prioritizing my relationship with food, I would say absolutely. That is my number one priority. That is my number one focus. I'm spending so much time, so much energy, so much of my attention on food. So why was I stuck then for 10 years? Because all of that energy, time, and attention was focused in the wrong direction. Remember what I've been saying in my last few episodes? Where your attention goes, your energy flows. That's direction. Even though in my mind, I was prioritizing my relationship with food, what was I really focusing on? Not binging. I was focusing on avoiding sugar. I was focusing on keeping the chocolate out of the house. I was focused on researching all the bad things that would happen to me if I kept eating sugar or if I kept overeating. All the health problems that I had. I was researching calories, macros. I was getting certifications in order to stop eating so badly, to stop binging, to stop emotional eating. What was I not actually directing my energy toward? Building a genuinely peaceful and healthy relationship with food. I know that's a subtle distinction, but it is the only distinction that matters. It is the distinction that matters. Guaranteed, this is a pattern of yours. Guaranteed. If you are listening to this podcast, you do this. And this is not something that we need to judge or that we need to beat ourselves for. This is something we need to be aware of so we can skillfully change direction, okay? Because there's a big difference between saying, how do I stop this behavior versus how do I create a completely different reality for myself? Whole new normal with food where all these things that I've been thinking about become non-issues. Okay, see, very, very different questions here. All right, got to let the cat out. Hang on. Okay. And by the way, this is the exact thing I was doing with movement too. These last 10 years, what was my focus? Got to get out of pain. I went to all the pain experts. I did this procedure and that procedure and this physical therapy and this protocol, all to get out of pain. What was I not focusing on? Building a strong and mobile body. What I'm focusing on now, I'm not even thinking about pain. I'm just focused on rebuilding what it is that I want to create for myself. I want a strong, mobile body until I die. That's what I want. So this is what I'm focused on building. So if you want a healthy and peaceful relationship with food, we cannot anymore be focusing on not binging. That's only drawing more of your attention to binging. That is the opposite of what we want. We need to focus on what we're creating. That's the direction. You know what my mom and my sister always do? Whenever we exit a store, they will walk so fast and so confidently to like the opposite side of the parking lot of where the car actually is. I always think to myself, how are you walking with so much confidence and speed in the completely wrong direction? But just because they're walking with confidence and speed doesn't mean they're ever going to reach the car, which is ultimately the goal, right? That confidence and speed is only going to get them to the car if they're walking in the right direction. And that's what I see so many people doing with food, to the point where when someone comes to work with me, they're shocked because they're thinking, how is it that I just made more progress in 2 weeks than I have in the last 25 years? And this is the question I've literally been asking myself with movement. How is it that in the last 2 months, I have made more progress than I have in the last 10 years? It's because now I'm focused in the right direction. I actually have a core strategy, mentors to help me. This is often what we need to bring us back. It's like having a hiking kind of tour guide. If we get off path, someone brings us back. We get off path, someone brings us back. We need to know where we're going. So sometimes it looks like and feels like we're prioritizing what we really want. But really what we're doing is managing the consequences of not having it. Like, I didn't have a strong mobile body, so I'm managing the pain. I didn't have a healthy relationship with food, so I'm managing the binges, and that's where my energy is going. So you see that very subtle but profound difference. This is the make or break for most people. So here are the questions to ask yourself, and then we'll get into the last category. Okay, here are the questions. Number 1, is what I'm doing helping me build what I say I want? Or am I just trying not to binge instead of actually building a healthy relationship with food? Am I just managing the symptom of my unhealthy relationship with food, or am I actually creating a whole new relationship altogether? Another example of this that I've done a million times, by the way, is I will say I'm prioritizing my health by sticking to this plan and following these food rules and doing these things I need to do to the point where I'm literally neglecting my body. Here I am wanting to have a healthy relationship with my body, to have a healthy relationship with myself. And I'm literally overriding my body signals in the name of health just to stick to this plan. These are the ways we self-sabotage that are so sneaky because we actually are doing things that feel like we're moving towards our goals, but they don't. It's actually the opposite of what we want. How can I build trust with my body if I'm overriding it just to stick with the stupid diet? It's insane. It's insane, but it feels so rational when we're doing it. It feels responsible even when we're doing it. My mind is always blown by this stuff. Now, here's another question to ask yourself, and listen to this. This is important. If I keep doing exactly what I'm doing, where will this take me? Okay, I'm going to repeat that. If I keep doing exactly what I'm doing, where will this take me? Now, notice where your mind went. If the answer started with the word hopefully, like, well, hopefully I'll be much better with food by then, and hopefully I'll no longer be binging, you've already lost. Because when you have a clear strategy that is completely aligned directionally with where you want to go, like you've got your North Star and you're doing all of the things to take you there is no hopefully. It's just a matter of fact. It's just a matter of time. Like with what I'm doing right now with movement, if you ask me now, if I keep doing exactly what I'm doing, where will this take me? Guaranteed, my body is going to be so strong and so mobile, and that will only increase over time. That's my genuine answer. In the past, when I was going through all those pain protocols, had you asked me the same question and said, well, if you keep doing exactly what you're doing, where will this take you? I would say, well, hopefully within a few months, I'll be able to feel a difference and hopefully my pain will be less. And they said it should be down by 50%. You feel the difference when you have trust and faith that your strategy is sound and you are moving in the right direction. There is no hopefully. It's just a matter of time. This is where if you don't actually know what you need to do in order to get the results you want, this is where mentors come in and you need to immerse yourself in whatever it is you need to do with the proper support in order to do it. Whew. Okay, so now we're going to finally move on to the last category, and then I have a couple closing exercises for you. So the last category is money. Now, money is a category where I feel like I've evolved a lot in my thought process around this. However, as we saw with the gym story that I told you, there's still residue that came up that said, oh, well, how can I just do this in a cheaper way? Now, the sneaky thing about that is that doesn't look like self-sabotage, right? It's not that I was saying, I refuse to invest in myself. Like, I don't see the value in investing in myself. Like, very few people actually will say that. But one of the ways that this pattern of deprioritizing ourselves shows up is the internal dialogue that can seem very rational, even in a way. So I want to give you an example of this. So I had a client who joined my program last year. And on one of our calls together, I didn't know this, by the way, when she joined, but on one of the calls, she said to me that the way that she justified the financial investment of it to herself was she calculated, I'm turning 50 this year. So let's assume I live until 70 or 80. That's 20 to 30 years. So by doing this program and doing this work, I'm going to have the tools that are going to give me a healthy relationship with food for the next 20 or 30 years. So if I think about the financial investment spread over those 20 to 30 years, it's actually very affordable. And that's what gave her the logical permission to pull the trigger and join. Now, I don't want you to think I'm judging this. I don't think that this is bad or wrong. And oftentimes we do need to walk ourselves through a process when we're making more significant financial decisions to make sure that it's worth it to us, right? But what was fascinating to me is that she needed to make it cheap enough in her own mind for her to be able to say yes. She had already been struggling with food for multiple decades. Her mom was still struggling with food, so you can only imagine how far back that goes. And by the way, I have done this exact same thing where I have a genuine need. Like, I would argue that ending a life-threatening overeating habit is extremely important. So why is it that in my own mind, I have to do all these loop-de-loops, that the problem is urgent enough to invest in myself, that it's affordable enough, that it's justified enough, that it's rational enough? I remember when I decided I needed to stop smoking. I mean, I had tried many times to stop smoking, but I got to a point where it really felt different. But I knew that in order for me to have the best chance of success, I needed to put myself in an environment where I would have zero access to it. So that way I can at least get a good month or so under my belt before even being triggered with temptation. So I ended up doing a training that was a month long, and I did it in the middle of nowhere in Mexico where I had no vehicle, no way of buying anything. And the whole thing, I think, cost a few $1,000s. I don't remember exactly. But I remember at the time, what I did was I calculated how much money I had spent on cigarettes and cigars up until that point, and was it more or less than what I was about to spend on this month away to give myself a real chance at quitting. So even though chronic smoking, just like chronic overeating, is a deadly habit, I still had to justify, well, over the next 3 years, I would save this much money by not smoking this many cigarettes. And I had to do a loop-de-loop to justify it to myself, as if my lungs aren't just worth it, as if my life force and my energy and my health aren't just worth it. It's priceless. This is the only body I get. I don't get another one. So, and oh my gosh, that actually just reminded me of another story. So this was years ago. This was when I first started coaching in this realm. And back then I was doing all my consultations on the phone. So if somebody was thinking about joining, they'd book a call with me. We would talk about what they were going through. I would describe the program. And then if they wanted to join, I would just enroll them over the phone. So this clinical psychologist signed up for a consultation with me. She was struggling, obviously, with binge eating. And the reason why she booked the call was because of her background in clinical psychology. She felt like she knew everything behaviorally that she needed to do, but was not doing it, and just had a health scare. And so she decided at that point, I'm going to book a call and I'm going to take this seriously. So we go through the call. She decides she definitely wants to join. So over the phone, she starts giving me her credit card number. And I'm about like 4 numbers in, just typing them in. And she stops. And she says, I'm actually not sure if I want to move forward with this. And I said, okay, why not? And she said, well, maybe if I just had one more health scare, that would motivate me into changing and I could just really do this on my own. And I remember pausing. I didn't even argue with her. I just said, repeat out loud again what you just said and listen to yourself. And so she repeated out loud again, oh, well, if I just had another health scare, maybe I would motivate myself. And then she was like, what am I doing? She's like, no, I don't need, I already had one health scare. Like, what am I doing? She goes, I just got nervous. Let's go. And in hindsight, she was like, how could I have not made this decision? Not just for my health, but also look at all the other ways that it's affecting my life. So let's circle back to these questions, to these little tests we can ask ourselves. So number one, if this genuinely matters to me, am I willing to invest appropriately? Now, I'm not just saying go out and spend money willy-nilly on the next thing you see. Discernment is important. Just spending money is not enough. Again, we need the time, we need the attention, and we need the direction, not just money. And I say this because there have been a number of times where I've bought something and I don't know what I was thinking, but I would just buy it and for some reason expect that because I invested money in it that I would get the result. without doing the work. And I'm a smart person, but this still happens. And in hindsight, if I look back, maybe I invested in this thing, but it wasn't directionally aligned, right? Maybe that's why I wasn't putting in the time or the attention because it wasn't truly aligned with me. So there's lots of nuances to this, but the idea is when you find the right thing to really help you, are you willing to say yes? Because the real question underneath that is, are you willing to say yes to yourself? Are you willing to prioritize yourself truly? So that's question number one. Now, the next three questions are really, really powerful. So, question number two, am I endlessly trying to justify why I'm allowed to spend money on myself? Is it way easier for me to spend money on other people than it is on myself? That is a clue that you need to practice saying yes to yourself, that you don't truly prioritize yourself yet to the degree that you need to get what you want. Now, number three, and this is something where I feel like I've made so much headway in, and this has really changed my way of thinking. Number three, am I calculating whether something is worth it while ignoring what it would cost me to not do it? As you guys know, I used to struggle with money a lot before I even started with this work. Money was a very difficult area for me. So I was very hyper aware of what I was spending on binges. I knew that these $7 on this or these $5 on this, I didn't really need to be spending, but it all was adding up over time. And for a while, I was in denial about it. I would just say, like, oh, well, that counts as grocery cost, which is okay. But in my mind, deep down, I knew that I could be saving thousands and thousands of dollars a year if it wasn't going toward the binges and the quick fixes and the supplements and all the stuff that I was doing. But then later that evolved even further. And I started looking at opportunity cost. And I would ask myself, especially as I was trying to motivate myself to get healthier back then, is I would say, without this problem, without binges, I would be able to show up with so much more energy to work. I would be able to put myself out there so much more because I'd feel so much better about myself. And I started realizing the opportunity cost. Like, this was the thought process I had 10 days ago, where I thought, I'm almost 40. The last 20 years went by like that. I can't afford anymore to just take my time with this and figure it out and trial and error on my own. My progress will increase exponentially if I have experts who can help me with this, who are actually looking at my body and can give me the feedback in real time. Another question that I asked myself in order to make that decision, I said, what would I tell my sister to do? Like, if Jenny came up to me and she was in the exact same position that I'm in, I would be like, Jenny, get the gym membership. Why are we even having this conversation? Like, it would be so obvious. So these are the questions to start asking yourself to see where you're not fully allowing yourself to say yes, where you're not fully prioritizing yourself. And for all of these categories, by the way, whether it's time, energy, money, the question I also want to pose is, why does something have to be a crisis before we legitimately say yes to ourselves? And same thing with the one who is worried about the health scare. Why does it take this much? Why does it have to get that bad before we prioritize ourselves? Again, I'm asking myself this question because I have been dealing with this pattern. And this is something that I have been actively breaking and creating new patterns where I let myself say yes. I'm not saying yes to just any willy-nilly desire that comes and I say, oh, this is my need and I need to give myself everything that I want. That's not what I'm talking about. But genuinely, something doesn't have to be on fire for us to give it our attention, but often it is. And you know what I found is if we do wait that long, it costs more. Like for me, I was ignoring my body pain for a very long time. Why? Because I was prioritizing work more. I was in these like business mentorship programs and they were promoting hustle, hustle, grind, grind, grind. And I was literally doing that. But what was the outcome of that? I hurt myself so badly, I couldn't even work for 6 months. So I lost 6 months of being able to help people. I lost 6 months of income. I lost 6 months of doing anything fun because I was bedridden, because I literally, my neck got so bad that I could not even hold my own head up. I couldn't even sit up straight. That's how bad it got. So in a way, I'm actually very grateful that I've had such extreme experiences so young, because I've seen now firsthand the cost of neglecting myself, the cost of not prioritizing myself truly. And I've also learned, and this has been a reframe of mine, because I used to think, oh, it's selfish to take care of myself first. No, no, no. Me taking care of myself means that I can take care of other people. And I see it. I am so much better for my clients when I prioritize my own mental and physical well-being, which sounds so obvious, but we don't do it, right? I see mothers who are way better parents because they prioritize themselves rather than let themselves get drained and drained and drained and then are lashing out at their kids. So when we prioritize ourselves, we actually get more and more of the thing that we're looking for. When we deprioritize ourselves, it actually costs us more of everything that we're trying to save, right? We're trying to save time. It ends up costing us more time. We try to save money. It ends up costing us more money. This is the universal lesson that has been raining down on me for 20 years. And I have to say it in as many ways as I possibly can. Number one, because I need to learn this again and again. Number two, I know that you need to hear this too. Because here's the truth. Here's the truth. We do not have unlimited time to be delaying the things that matter most. I've been reflecting on the last 20 years. Those 20 years went by so fast. And as we get older, time passes even faster. So before I know it, 20 years from now, I'm going to be 60. So do I really want to spend my next 20 years still negotiating with myself on how much I actually allow myself to prioritize my body, the one body that I have? And this is what I need to keep bringing myself back to, because the fact of the matter is, if we've been thinking in one way for a long time, where we've been deprioritizing ourselves again and again, putting everyone else before us, minimizing our own needs, that pattern doesn't just disappear overnight. It doesn't. But the beauty of change is when that old residue, those old thoughts start to come up, we can notice them, but then those thoughts are not our decision makers anymore. We make new decisions where we actually are prioritizing ourselves fully. So don't worry if you still have those old thoughts. I do too. They come up. As you saw, I dealt with it 10 days ago. The goal is to catch it before it ruins your life. So now let's bring this all together full circle. So what does it actually mean to prioritize ourselves? It does not mean that we just have no discrimination and every desire we have, we call it a need and then we give ourselves that. We spend money on whatever we want. We throw away all of our responsibilities. That's not what I'm saying. It means being honest with yourself about what you genuinely need and then giving yourself your own blessing to pursue that. And this can come in the form of time, that you need to spend more time on something. It could come in the form of attention. You need to pay more attention to this. It could come in the form of money. You really need to invest in something to be able to get the result you want. And of course, with all of that, the direction has to be there, because we can put all the time and all the energy and all the money into something, but if it's in the wrong direction, we're not going to end up where we want to go. So I've given you a lot of questions to ask yourself today. But the one question, and you might have heard me say this at the beginning, the one question, if somebody outside of you, they can't hear your thoughts, they can't hear your words, they don't know your intentions. All they can see is physically what you're doing, where your time is going, where your money's going, what direction you're focusing on. If all they could see was that, what would they think your priority was? And if I had to give you one final takeaway or one final message here, I would really want to say to you what I've been saying to myself. You have this one body. That's it. Give yourself permission to truly prioritize it. Time goes fast. Life before we know it will be done. Give yourself permission to treat yourself like you would your most cherished loved one. That's when things really start to change. So, as always, I hope you've gotten some good takeaways or reflections from this episode. I hope that all the mistakes that I've made will save you time and energy in your own process, which is why I share all of these things. I will see you in just a couple of days with another teaching. So make sure you're signed up to receive everything at katiepapo.com/resources, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.